Senator Plett.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Senator Ringuette, for letting us know whether or not you were going to support that, because I really was listening and was very unsure of whether you were going to support this amendment or not until the very end. But now at least we are sure of that, so we appreciate your directness there. I also have a few words to say on the amendment, and then like the previous speech, I will sidetrack to speaking maybe about other things in the amendment, because that's what we just heard. 13 out of the 15 minutes that we just heard was giving us a history lesson as opposed to speaking to the amendment. But colleagues, I am happy to rise on debate on Senator Quinn's amendment. And I will also preface, as Senator Ringuette did, I will be brief. I support the amendment. As I said on Tuesday, I don't see why the government should have more time to answer questions than the questions of the members of the House of Commons. And I say members of the House of Commons as compared to MPs, because I agree with Senator Quinn. We are all MPs. We are all members of Parliament. And I don't really see how letting the government not answer our questions by simply tabling a document saying they cannot answer the question, how that is any good. I want to take this opportunity as well, colleagues, if I could, to correct just a few things that were said on Tuesday and Wednesday. First, I said a few times in my speech on Tuesday that Pierre Poilievre had opened up a 20-point lead over the Liberals. 3 polls released this week from Abacus, Nanos, and Ledger show that this lead is now, in fact, 21 points.
22.
So I stand corrected. I apologize. In fact, I will note that the Trudeau Liberals have lost ground since Senator Gold tabled motion 165. So clearly, Canadians are not as enthusiastic as some senators think that they are about this Trudeau Senate. In fact, since this new Senate has been in place, there were 2 general elections, in 2019 and 2021. In both of those, Conservative leaders, Mr. Scheer and Mr. O'Toole, promised to reverse the course of those changes, and they both got more votes than Justin Trudeau did.
That's true.
And Pierre Poilievre, who has the same policy, is now leading by 21 points. So let me take all those arguments about Canadians supporting the changes to the Senate with a grain of salt. Secondly, Senator Down asked me on Tuesday if I would be open to negotiations with the government on the changes, and I said yes, I would be. I want to report to this chamber that I have been open ever since, but there has been no offer made to have those negotiations, none. That door has been firmly closed. We are not negotiating this. We are pushing this through. Third, Senator St. Germain said the reason for the longer delay for government to answer Senate questions was the ability to create an enormous number of questions with the help of artificial intelligence. I want to reassure Senator St. Germain, one, my office is churning out a large number of questions, and we use human intelligence. You don't need AI. 2, in motion 165, senators are limited to 3 questions. So whatever AI may help you with, it won't do a lot. And 3, or is that 4 now? Members of the House who have access to the same tools as senators could use have to wait 45 days instead of 60, like Senator Gold wants us to wait. Fifth, there has been mentions of the House of Lords as a model for these changes. Let me correct the record on 2 things about that. 1, the crossbenchers will never have a majority in the Lords. That would be against the law. No one disputes the fact that Lords can belong to parties represented in the House of Commons. In 2017, the Lord Speaker's Committee on the Size of the House of Lords recommended that the appointments to the Lords would be linked to general election results. 6, Senator Delfond mentioned the changes made to the rules in 1991 as proof that the use by the government of a motion to unilaterally push changes to the rules as motion 165 is not precedent-setting. It is true that the changes were adopted by a vote of 40 to 30, but the vote was on a report by the Rules Committee, not on a motion from the government.
With time allocation.
We have no issue with the Rules Committee. On June 18, 1991, senators voted on the report of the committee. The Liberals voted against. And yes, the senators appointed under Section 26 of the B&A Act, also known as the GST senators, participated in that vote. They had been members of the Senate for 9 months. 9 months before that vote. Senator Delfond's amazement that these senators voted on Rules Committee report in 1991 is surprising. I hope he is saying that our colleagues who joined the Senate in the last 9 months, or maybe even in the last month and a half or 2 months, should not now vote on motion 165, because that's what I heard. So the committee report was adopted after 1 week of debate. The Liberals had plenty of ammunition to do a long filibuster. They did not. They could have presented amendments. They did not. They had 52 members in their caucus. Only one spoke on the motion, and then more than 40% of their members did not vote.
I didn't know that.
That shows that there was not unanimity, there was consensus.
Interesting.
Strange.
Interesting.
The Standing Committee on Standing Rules and Orders, as it was then known, had 28 hours of meetings on the changes to the rules.
Wow.
There was no strong discussion, but a lot of work on the language of the new rules. That is exactly what we have been saying. Why not let the Rules Committee do its job like they did in 1991? Something Senator Delfond should certainly support. And finally, I want to be clear on one thing. The argument that having a so-called nonpartisan Senate is somehow a return to the original Senate. This is false. Let me repeat that. That is false. You can present the Trudeau Senate as a new Senate, a modern Senate, a 21st century Senate. I don't agree. But at least there is an argument here. But to present motion 165 and the other changes made to the Senate by Justin Trudeau as somehow going back to 1867 is a complete lie, and it has to stop. You will never find a period in Canadian history where the Senate was not a partisan chamber. This supposedly golden age, where gentlemen were quietly attending to the nation's business while smoking cigars and sipping whiskey without any link to raunchous debates going on in the House, never existed. It's a fabrication. Resolution 14 of the Quebec Conference stated clearly that appointments to the Senate should be made, and I quote, so that all political parties may as nearly as possible be fairly represented. That bears repeating. So all political parties may as nearly as possible be fairly represented. So in essence, the refusal by Justin Trudeau to appoint partisan senators goes directly against what the Senate was supposed to be according to its founding fathers. Let me quote James Bowden in an article titled, "The Founders' Senate and Ours, Canada's Upper House, was and is supposed to be partisan," published in 2019. As the minutes of the Quebec Conference, the Quebec resolutions, and the London resolutions demonstrate, the framers took the partisanship of their provincial legislative councils and the Senate of Canada for granted. Indeed, they considered partisanship integral to the functioning of the upper chambers. That was never up for debate at all. And they all accepted the principle and merely haggled over the most efficient means of securing the partisan character of the Senate of Canada from the moment that it first met. End of quote. So, of Quebec's first 24 senators, 16 were conservative or liberal-conservatives. 8 were liberals. Ontario sent 14 conservatives or liberal/conservatives and 10 liberals to the Senate. These reflected the will of the electorates of Canada East and Canada West. In addition, the first 12 senators for New Brunswick maintained partisan balance between 6 liberals and 6 conservatives. Of the first 12 senators for Nova Scotia, however, 8 were conservatives and 4 were liberals. As Canada's second Prime Minister, Alexander Mackenzie, said, "The Senate must necessarily be composed of gentlemen holding the political views of one or the other of the two great parties into which political society is divided." So let me repeat, the argument that having a so-called nonpartisan Senate is somehow a return to the original Senate is false. You know, and I need to just go off track here for a second. When somebody like Senator Ringuette, who I have a lot of respect as a good parliamentarian who has been a good Liberal senator for so many years, to stand in this chamber and all of a sudden say we should be a nonpartisan chamber when she is probably, aside from myself, the most partisan senator we have in this chamber, and yet preaches that we should be nonpartisan. I cannot understand how that can be. Well, I guess nonpartisanship means let's not be conservative. Senator Kusner, at least, is sitting where he is sitting, not often talking. I'm a little disappointed about that, but nevertheless, he will catch his second wind at some point. But I know he is a Liberal through and through and through, and he's proud of it. He's not giving up on that. He's a Liberal. He knows that. But for me, you cannot have your cake and eat it too. You cannot say what Justin Trudeau is doing is a revolution, that this is novel. And oh boy, he is such a visionary. And then claim that those very same changes are us going back to 1867. It's one or the other. You cannot be revolutionary and reactionary at the same time. So I have a fair bit more to say on this amendment. I am supporting it, but I need to collect my thoughts a little bit on this. So I will adjourn the debate for the balance of my time. Thank you, colleagues.